Good morning. Yesterday we left off in Peter Brown's The Wild Robot, where Bright Bill had just flown away to start her migration, and Roz is now alone. Chapter 54, The Winter. The island was quiet. The migratory birds had all left, the hibernators were asleep, and everyone else had begun their simple winter routines. Everybody but Roz. Now that she was alone, our robot didn't know what to do with herself. She stood in her gray garden and watched a sheet of ice slowly form on the pond. Sometimes she could hear her good friends, the beavers, going about their business beneath the ice, and she wondered when she would see them again. Roz stood there until snowflakes started drifting down from the sky. The flakes swirled in the breeze and slowly piled up on the ground and on the trees and on the robot. So she crouched into the nest, slid the stone door behind her, and sat in the darkness. Hours and days and weeks went by without the robot moving. She had no need to move. She felt perfectly safe in the nest, and so, in her own way, the robot hibernated. Roz's body relaxed. Her quiet whirling slowly stopped. Her eyes faded to black. She probably could have spent centuries like that, hibernating in total darkness. But the robot's hibernation was suddenly interrupted when a shaft of sunlight fell upon her face and carried energy back to her empty battery. Roz's body tensed. Her quiet whirling slowly started. Her eyes began to glow. "Hello, I am Rozium Unit 7134, but you can call me Roz," the robot said automatically. When all her systems were up and running again, Roz noticed that she was surrounded by broken branches and piles of snow. The roof of the nest had caved in. The lodge was now flooded with sunlight. Roz felt more energized with each passing minute, but she also felt cold. Her joints felt stiff and brittle, and her thinking was slow. She got up, cleared a spot on the floor, and made a fire. The snow inside the nest began to melt, and the robot's sensors began to thaw. And when she was ready, she climbed out through the hole in the roof and into the bright foreign landscape. The world Roz had known was now covered in a thick layer of snow. Tree limbs bent to the ground under heavy sleeves. The dark pond was now pure white. The only sound were Roz's own crunching footsteps. Faint wisps of steams curled off the robot's body as she trudged through the forest. Roz plunged a hand into a lump of snow and pulled up a long stick. She snapped it in half and flung both pieces back to the nest. She took a few more steps and picked up a fallen tree. She hacked it up into smaller pieces and flung them back as well. Then she reached down to another snowy shape. But what she pulled up was not a piece of wood. It was Dart the Weasel. He was frozen solid. Roz stared at his stiff body for a moment, then decided it was best to leave the poor thing where he was. As the robot continued gathering wood, she found more victims of the snow. A frozen mouse, a frozen bird, a frozen deer. Had all the animals frozen to death? No, not all. There were a few fresh tracks in the snow. As we know, the wilderness is filled with beauty, but it is also filled with ugliness. And that winter was ugly. A devastating cold front had swept down from the north and brought dangerous temperatures and huge amounts of snow. The animals had prepared for winter, but nothing could have prepared the weaker ones for those long nights when the temperature plummeted and the wind whipped over the island. Roz returned to the nest, where the fire had melted the interior snow to a muddy soup. She took a minute to warm her body by the flames, and then she began the repairs. She patched up the hole in the dome and the lattice work of branches before adding a layer of mud and leaves, and soon the repairs were complete. But another snowfall might cave in the nest all over again, so Roz decided to keep the fire going day and night to prevent snow from building up on the roof. The robot brought in a load after load of firewood, and each time she went outside, she was reminded of the frozen weasel and mouse and bird and deer. How many other frozen animals were hidden beneath the snow? Before going in for the night, she called out to whoever was listening, "Animals of the island, you do not have to freeze. Join me in my lodge, where it is safe and warm." Chapter 55, The Lodgers. Firelight spilled out from the nest and into the cold, blustery night. Roz sat inside and listened to the wind and the soft pops and cracks of burning wood. And then the robot's keen hearing picked up another sound, tiny footsteps crunching through. Roz, I'm freezing. Can I join you by your fire, please? Said a weaker voice. Into the light crawled Chit-Chat. The squirrel was shivering, and clumps of ice stuck to her fur. When she finally felt the heat of the fire, she collapsed. Roz picked her up off the floor, gently placed her on a warm stone, and let her sleep. An hour later, there were more footsteps, and a family of hares shuffled into the nest. They huddled together in the corner without saying a word. Pinktail, the possum, was next to arrive. "Good evening," she mumbled, trying to act cheerfully. "It certainly is a chilly." Swooper the owl hobbled in, followed by some chickadees and a magpie. Fink knew a good thing when he saw it, and the fox lay down right by the fire. Then came Dig Down the groundhog. The fuzzy bandits carried in an old turtle named Craig, who was in the worst shape of all. Creatures who should have been hibernating deep underground had been roused by the vicious winter. Only the healthiest animals with the warmest homes were safe. More and more weary animals appeared, and slowly the lodge began to fill up. This was the first time many of the lodgers had ever seen fire, and they gazed at it with a mixture of fear and hope. They could feel the fire's destructive power, but they could also feel its healing power as it warmed their bodies. The lodgers seemed to push forward, eager to feel more warmth, and then pull back, afraid of feeling too much. It was important that the lodgers understood fire, so Roz showed them how to build one. She showed the smaller animals how to arrange the kindling, and she showed the bigger animals how to arrange the logs. Bumpkin, Lumpkin, and Rumpkin struck the firestones together, and everyone cheered when they finally managed to spark. As Roz looked around, she saw moles curling up beside an owl, a mouse snuggling in between two weasels, hares nestling against a badger. Never before had the robots seen prey and predators so close and peaceful. But how long could this peace possibly last? "I propose a truce," said Roz. "Like the Dawn Truce, everyone must agree not to hunt or harm one another while in my lodge." "Very well," said Swooper after consulting the carnivorous friends. "We hunters will control ourselves." "Then it is settled," said Roz. "My home is a safe place for all." One by one, the lodgers each fell into a deep sleep. Even the nocturnal creatures, usually wide awake at that hour, gave in to the coziness of the nest. The robot stood out of the way and quietly tended the fire as her guests slept through the night. Only when daylight was streaming in through the door did the lodgers finally begin to stir. "You are welcome to stay as long as you like," said the robot as the animals rubbed their sleep from their eyes. "My home is your home." "Thanks a lot, Roz." Fink carefully stepped over a hare and a woodpecker on his way to the door. "I don't think I would have survived another night on my own. It's just too bad we can't cram a few more creatures in here." And the fox slipped outside. The robot looked down at the fur and feathers that now carpeted the floor. The nest had been completely full that night. If any more animals showed up, they'd be left out in the cold. But Roz was not about to let that happen. 2 chapters, more Wild Robot. It's looking like a pretty nasty little winter. What do you guys think is going to happen next? Comment down below. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.